Every time I would try and start playing Dark Souls 2, I would boot up the game, make a character, make some good progress, and then get sidetracked by other games. So I decided I was finally going to beat Dark Souls 2, but figured why not make it interesting, so I let my viewers vote on what weapon I should use to beat the game, and they picked Bone Fist. So this is my first time beating Dark Souls 2, but with only using Bone Fist. With that said, let's go over the rules. Rule number 1, Bone Fist only, which means I cannot use any other weapon than the Bone Fist to kill enemies. Rule number 2, buffs are allowed. It would just be a bit boring if I couldn't have fun with buffs. Number 3, I cannot level Vigor. I did this to just add a bit of challenge to the run. And lastly, I must beat every boss in the game. All 41 of them. My lord, that is a lot. Either way, with the rules done with, let's get this adventure started. Starting off my adventure, my character wakes up from a nice nap to then get fussed at by an old lady telling me how easy this game is, and if I want a real challenge, I should be playing Tamagotchi because keeping those damn suckers alive is almost impossible. After getting schooled on by Nana, I finally get to make my character, and I named him Ryu, and most of y'all already know why I named him that. For the class, I went with the Knight since it gave me a good amount of vigor, and for the fact it has 11 strength and 9 dex. This will make sense in a bit. For my gift, I went with the Bonfire aesthetic because I'll be needing it for levels. With my character done with, I can obtain the Bone Fist by modding them in. The Bone Fists are locked behind the Ivory King DLC, so there's no way for me to start with them. With that said, let's talk about the Bone Fist. The Bone Fist is a strength dex weapon that needs a whopping 30 dex and 15 strength to use single-handedly. For power stancing, I will need 45 dex and 22 strength. For its basic R1 combo, it's the good old boxing 1-2. Its L1 is the same as the R1, but just with its left hand. Its R2 is a leg sweep followed by a strong punch, and a follow R2 leads into a flying kick. When two-handing it, its R1 does a downward thrust followed by a good old 1-2 combo. Its R2 does a powerful thrust followed by an uppercut. When power stancing, its L1 combo has wide swings mixed in with a thrusting knee followed up by a gut punch. Its L2 is a Hadouken, which is just fucking cool, and FromSoft needs to bring this back. And lastly, when doing a roll attack, it does an uppercut. With the weapon talk done, let's get on with the story. As you can already tell, I cannot use the Bone Fist, so I head over to Hyde's Tower of Flame to make Dragon Rider fall off a ledge. But not just once, but twice. For those of you who do not know, you can use Bonfire aesthetics to push that area into the next NG cycle, which brings back the boss. So by doing this, I'm able to obtain 48,000 souls with the 2 kills, which then I can use to get my dex to 30 and my strength to 15 to be able to use the Bone Fist. It will just be a minute before I can power stance. Once finally being able to use the Bone Fist, I start making my way to the last giant, and came to the area that is supposedly a gank area. Seems like some people were trying to be a bit misleading in all those DS2 are bad videos. Further along, I tried to do a speedrunner skip. Well, I guess I'll be taking the long way then. I then picked some fights with some soldiers to practice a bit of my karate, to then pick up some aromatic ooze. With all that done, I was ready for the last giant. The last giant wasn't too bad. I found if I just stayed behind his legs and just rotated between the two of them, I could avoid most of his attacks. But the last giant must have watched my last video because he had no issues hitting me with his backhand. Either way, after a few punches to the knee, the big boy goes down. To then have a heart attack because apparently enemies come running in right afterwards. Thank you, FromSoft. After surviving that sneak attack, I buy a Ferrous Stone to get access to the Calanthe Ring and pick up the Life Ring while I'm at it. Once having the ring, I use the rest of my souls to get my strength to 18. After leveling, I talk to a depressed dude who lets me join his covenant and gives me the blue seal. With all that homework done with, it's time for the Ursurer. If you didn't know, the P is silent like in Pterodactyl. I figured with how much everyone loves how much I mispronounced some names, I figured I would just have a little bit of fun with it in this video. Starting off, I had a bit of a rough time with the Pursuer since all the other times I fought it, I just used the ballistas. But after getting my brain smacked around for a bit, I found I could just walk around them. Now, I know I could have just parried them, which I did try, but I figured I wouldn't be consistent with it, so I just stuck with walking in a circle. The real lightbulb moment here was when I switched to two-handing and ended up being able to poise break the boss, which helped speed up this slow fight tremendously. If only I knew how broken the two-handed R2 attack was at this point. I won't learn that until much, much later. But with a good few thrusts from behind, the Usurer goes down. With the Pursuer dead, I get access to the Lost Bastille, which gives me access to Macduff, which I kindly steal his upgrade materials for myself. It's all good, Macduff is a cool dude. While in the Lost Bastille, I pick a fight with another Pursuer, which this time I started to realize how strong the two-handed R2 was. I am not joking, a basic R1 does 115 and the R2 does 525. Which also does more poise damage and is safer than having to spam the R1 multiple times. But with the Pursuer defeated, I get my first Twinkling Titanite, which is the upgrade material for the Bone Fist, which I use to get my Bone Fist to +1. So I knew there was a Pursuer at the Forest of Fallen Giants, but apparently they don't show up after you beat the boss one in the area. So that sucks. I could have used another Twinkling Titanite. Sadness aside, I leveled my strength up to 25, headed over to No Man's Wharf to take on Flexile Sentry. And if you're wondering why I have no Estus, I couldn't figure out the shortcut, so I just said fuck it. Come to find out, apparently you just have to push it over and it wasn't the lever. But hey, it is what it is. Little Flex was an easy fight. I found I could easily punish his jump attacks, so I would just bait it out. What I didn't expect was once he was past half health, the water level rises and he would no longer do his jump attacks. Which means I had to actually fight him fairly. Yuck. But after a few smacks, Little Flex went down. I then used his souls to level my dex to 36 and I finally decided to upgrade my armor. If you are wondering why I'm only in pants and gloves, this felt the closest to cosplay I could get to Ryu, so I decided to deal with the handicap for cosplaying purposes. With the upgrading done with, I pick a fight with Licha, and if that's mispronounced wrong, you can blame Google. And by fight, I mean lead her off a ledge. I ain't letting no heathen dupe me out of souls. After killing a heathen, I wasn't satisfied, so I figured I would kill 3 more. The first round was going well until I had to retreat due to my health getting too low to get jumped by heathen number 3. For round 2, I learned my lesson and just DPS faster this time to not let a single sentinel get an attack in. Also helps that you can just walk around their attacks. With that, the ruined sentinels go down. Still thirsting for more blood, I found another Pursuer to bully with my karate, which gave me enough souls to get my dex to 45 to finally be able to power stance. Feels good to be able to use the Hadouken. Only downside is to this is it uses a lot of durability. With having the Hadouken, I figured it was time for my next boss fight. To find out, I need a key to light the room. So I went fight the Belfry Gargoyles. So the start of the fight wasn't going too well. I started out by trying to melee, which just led to me getting hit since there was 4 of those bastards out and about. Once getting tired of that, I unleashed the Hadouken on these gargoyles' asses, and they went down in a matter of seconds. I see why people like spamming it in Street Fighter. After practicing the best key spell in the game, I grabbed the Bastille Key, level my ADP to 16 to help with iframes, light the 2 fires, and take on the last dinner. So this is my actual first time fighting the Lost Sinner. I never actually got to fight her on any of my other attempts at beating the game. For someone who has the Bed of Chaos Soul, she really wasn't too bad. Now, having Hadouken of course helped a lot with keeping distance. What was actually bad was the game's lock-on system, because my god, what the fuck was this? Half the challenge of this fight was trying to aim the damn Ki Blast. But once I got it figured out, the Lost Sinner went down shortly after. With the Lost Sinner defeated, I headed back to Majula to buy the Silver Cat Ring to get access to the Grave of Saints to take on the Royal Rat Vanguard, where I ran around killing rats and hoping I wouldn't get petrified, to then meet Mohawk Rat, who I happily punched to death. I'll be honest, I'm not too sure why this is a boss fight. With the army of rats dead, I went to the gutter and for the life of me couldn't find the starting bonfire in the area, so I said fuck it and just went for it. Really, it wasn't too bad getting to the next bonfire. This dark area has nothing on the Tomb of Giants. Being full of confidence, I made it to the Black Gulch to do a dead sprint to the boss room because fuck this area and its poison projectiles. I know you can break them, I just didn't feel like taking the time to do that. With that said, it's time for the Rotten, who is secretly a big softy who likes to play with Legos. It's okay, buddy. I feel the same way too when my Legos break. The Rotten was a pretty chill boss. I decided to just stay back and spam Ki Blast, but my monkey brain forgot about durability, which led to both of my fists breaking, with the Rotten just about nearing a quarter of health left. For a second, I thought I was going to have to die and retry, but upon finding out I could still do okay damage by hitting his arms, I decided to not give up and just take my time hitting the big softy until he finally went down. I definitely learned my lesson, no more abusing the Hadouken. With the Rotten no more, I light the primal bonfire and examine the snake fountain. Closed. Got it. I'll be back later when I figure out this is one of the DLC entrances. After being rejected by a door, I pop some souls and start leveling intelligence and faith. It will make sense in a bit. Once done at Majula, I head over to the Huntsman's Copse to get an item. I said to get an item. Thank you. Oh, fuck me. Why do I even try? After that epic failure, I beeline it through the hordes of enemies to take on the Skeleton Lords, who surprisingly died really fast and summoned a horde of their own. I will be honest, the second I saw the bone wheels, I actually got scared. But funny enough, they weren't that hard to deal with. I guess the DS1 versions are just more aggressive. Either way, once the bone wheels were taken care of, I rounded up the horde to use the Hadouken. One of the many perks of the Ki Blast is that it can stun enemies easily, but it can also hit multiple enemies at once. So I started blasting until the final skeleton was dead. With the Skeleton Lords defeated, I ended up running into Taylor Swift. No clue why this NPC reminds me of her, but it was the first thing that came to mind when seeing her. Unfortunately for me, the fire lady saw me with another woman, so they blasted me with fire. I guess it's as they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. But it's no worries, I smacked some sense into them because I believe in equality. After spreading equality, I came across a sperm monster, who gave me a very disturbing look.
Oh my god! It's getting bigger!
To say the sperm boss put up a fight would be an understatement. He kind of just flopped around while I smacked him to death. Another interesting choice for a boss fight. Once done with the covetous demon, I went back to Majula to beef up my karate armor so that I can take on the rival karate team's leader, Cobra Kai's Ornstein. And I know this is true because he does dark magic now and not lightning. Surprisingly, with him being on NG+1 cycle, he didn't hit as hard as I thought he would. I was expecting him to one-shot me for the most part, but funnily enough, he was actually the squishy one. With dealing only 120 damage, it was taking massive amounts of HP off. But Ornstein didn't have to worry too much about that because the lock-on system was on his side. Even with being handicapped like Daniel was in Karate Kid, I just kept Hadouken until I couldn't Hadouken anymore, leading me to win the All Valley Karate Tournament. With trophy in hand, I talked to Tar Gray, and with me getting the Token of Fidelity, this let me join his covenant. This would allow me to buy a Bolt Stone, which lets me turn a weapon into an infused lightning weapon, which was my plan, but once finding out that it drops my strength and dex scaling, I decided to hold off on it for a bit. Being frustrated with my findings, I burned down a windmill. It helped me feel better. I then did some exploring to die to a mimic. No clue he could grab me from that distance, but the worst part was every time I tried to get back there, I constantly got killed. So I got so frustrated that I said fuck this place and ran straight to the boss. This isn't my first time fighting Mytha, the Baneful Queen, but even with my one-time experience before with her, if you know what I mean, led to me believing she would be a tough fight, but that wasn't the case. With me weaving between ki blasts and flying kung fu moves, I was easily able to beat her on my first try. Sometimes it pays off just going in with zero expectations. With Mytha defeated, that gives me access to my second least favorite area in the game, Iron Keep. As someone who does not like NPC invaders or even invading player fights, being forced into two of them, even when being hollowed, just rubbed me the wrong way. In DS1 and DS3, you have the option to opt out of this by being hollow, which is nice because you are given the choice to deal with it or not. But that is not the case in DS2. Whether you are hollowed or not, the invaders will come. I am happy for those who do enjoy it, but for me personally, I am not a fan of this mechanic. I'm going to stop here on the rant because I can go further, but would rather get on with the story. After finally dealing with the invaders, I needed to take my anger out on someone, and who better than the Smelter Demon. The Smelter Demon has a really cool design, but it does bother me that after he charges up, it basically screws over melee characters, because once he powers up, if you are near him, you take tick damage. Now, it's not a lot of damage, but I just don't like this mechanic. I had the same complaint with Abridus. Besides that, I do think he's a pretty fun boss, except for the random AoEs. Those were not fun. There might be a tell that gives away that he's going to do it, but it always felt random. But regardless, once learning his patterns and smacking his smoking hot booty, the Smelter Demon went down. The painful thing is I died more times to the shortcut than to the Smelter Demon. Afterwards, I was so close to hitting 20 in Faith and Intelligence that I just grinded it out for a bit so that I could get access to the Sunset Staff and Dark Weapon, which I cannot use because you need 22 intelligence to use it. Lovely. At least I upgraded my fist to +2. So I went back to Iron Keep to find out the enemies in DS2 have ridiculously long leashes. I understand to a degree not wanting players to run past stuff, but I would rather it not be done in this way. I personally would prefer to be able to find a path to get past enemies because killing enemies 12 times to make them no longer be there is just tedious to me and not fun. But hey, if that's your jam, more power to you. Once finally making out of that hellish hallway, it was time for the old Iron King, who smacked me into the smallest hole in the arena, for me to come back in and fly off the edge like a Looney Tunes cartoon, for me to easily punch his lingering arms to death. A bit sad I died more times to this guy than most late game bosses. With the old, cool looking but boring fight king dead, I leveled my init to 22 to finally be able to use dark weapons, and dump the rest of the souls into endurance and strength, to take on undead purgatory, which I had no fucking clue I was walking into a boss fight, which made me pucker my butt cheeks faster than I can mispronounce Amidala. Luckily, Executioner's Chariot is basically a gimmick fight. You just have to kill 2 old ladies, then the skeletons, and then pull a lever to fight the horse, which you can just spin in a circle to beat. Stressing out my buns for no reason, FromSoft. The best part about this area is this little guy right here, because if you reject him, he says this, which is my response when people tell me to wear armor in my challenge runs. So this dude instantly became my favorite NPC. After talking to Carl, I realized I only had 4 points into attunement, which I needed 10 for a spell slot. Rejected by my own idiocracy. Once done leveling, I saved a fine-looking woman who I had to use my karate skills to protect from a gank squad, which ended up leading me to this handsome Rockefeller, who I instantly related to. Us introverts gotta stick together. Or not. Also, the voice actor does an amazing job. I could easily sit here and keep going through his dialogue, but I have bosses to kill. Up next on the list is Scorpioness Najka, aka Scorpion Quelaag. At first, Najka was pounding me pretty hard from behind with her magic, which I am all for some Dami Mami Maria action, but I got 24 bosses to go, so I used a bit of jutsu to flip this scorpion bitch around and give her a good pounding. But, of course, I had to finish it off with a ki blast to the face. Wink wink. With Najka getting a happy ending, I made my way through the doors of Pharos to find some dwarfs. I hope they are nice. Nope, definitely not nice. Definitely not nice. Once done chatting with the dwarfs, I made it to Brightstone Cove to take on Prowling Magus and Congregation. Nothing much to say here, I punched some nerds and cripples in the face. I then headed back to Majula and leveled my attunement to 10 to actually be able to use Dark Weapon. Took me long enough. With being able to use Dark Weapon, I wanted to test it out, and what better way than on a boss. Probably should have tested it on a boss that would be 1v1 and not a gank boss fight. With not really having good armor and dealing with 5 enemies at once, I ended up dying 7 times. When I finally killed the ads, the Royal Rat Authority didn't give me any issues, which is usually the case with these types of boss fights. I then made my way through the spider-infested tomb, or crypt, no clue what it actually is, but I knew to use my torch thanks to Domo 3000. I watched quite a few of his videos on defending DS2, and I learned this tip from him, which led to me using the torch in the next boss fights with the Duke's Dear Freya. So this was my first time fighting the big spider, and I was very confused on how to actually damage it, leading to me taking a decent beating at the beginning, but once learning that you need to hit the face and that it has 2 faces, I was easily able to beat the bosses by switching between the heads like the professional blower that I am. Speaking of blowing, I did not expect a bonfire to blow up. Great, I will now have trust issues with bonfires. This weird fella named Aldia pops out and starts talking about something, but I have bosses to kill, so I didn't pay attention. I'll just watch a body video on it. With 20 bosses down and 21 more to go, it was time for Drainlick Castle, which has a very cool mechanic where you have to kill enemies in front of statues to open doors or activate elevators. I then proceeded through the castle, opening doors, ignoring a chest in the center of a room because this isn't my first FromSoft game, and taking on 2 dragon riders. Man, this game really likes duo and gank fights. Huh. Surprisingly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Early into the fight, I was able to get the halberd rider to knock down the bow rider, for me to easily DPS the bow rider in 3 hits. Did not expect him to be that squishy. After taking down the bow rider, the halberd rider didn't put up much of a fight. With the 2 riders defeated, I used their souls to start working my way to 50 strength. I then solved the statue and puppet puzzle to get the key to the King's Passage, to take on the Looking Glass Knight. If you didn't know, when 2 S's followed by a silent K makes the K no longer silent, but makes the 2 S's silent. English language, gotta love it. The Looking Glass Knight was pretty chill. You can just walk around all of his attacks and hit him from behind. But once he gets below half health, he summons an invader, or at least I think it was a non-player invader. I learned afterwards that he can summon actual players. But once again, another duo fight. With Glass Knight's health so low, I just went straight for him to finish the fight and not have to deal with the hassle of fighting an invader. With the Looking Glass Knight no more, I made my way into the infamous Shrine of Amana. Apparently, soldiers in this area dropped Twinkling Titanite, which helped me get my fist to +3. Now, I heard this place was rough, especially for melee users, but it really wasn't that bad. I will be honest and say it was tedious when I did die and had to slowly work my way back, but I really didn't have that many issues with the area, and on the plus side, the place is very aesthetically pleasing. While here, I was able to pick up the Sunlight Blade, which you need 35 faith to use, but DS2 has an awesome mechanic with spices, where you can actually lower the level requirement using the right spice. I had 9 Skeptic spices to get the faith requirement down to 27. I really like this mechanic, and I think FromSoft should bring it back. It would make low-level runs, or even single stat runs, more interesting with the builds you can make. With all that done, I was ready to take on Demon Song, aka Voldemort if he was a frog. So my go-to tactic was to smack his face, thinking it would do more damage than attacking his arms, which led to me nipping his lower lip, negating my attack. Getting frustrated by this, I said screw it and started attacking his arms, which does the same amount of damage as if I was hitting his face. Thank you, FromSoft. Once realizing this, I just DPS his arms down to bring him down. Who would have thought Bonefist could destroy Horcruxes? I then used my newly acquired souls to level my strength up a bit, to then get blown up again by Aldia. I forgot I can't trust bonfires in this game. He talks to me a bit and gives me a yes or no prompt. I figured with him not being a bald white guy with a spear and shield, I could say yes to him without anything bad happening. After saying yes to a stranger's request, I wake up some dead people to kill them once more and to take on Velstadt, the Royal Aegis. I probably said that wrong. Can y'all guess what my strategy was for this fight? If you guessed just run around him and press R2, you would be correct. It kind of seems to be most bosses' weakness. Now, things did get a bit more interesting when he started using hexes, but not by that much. With just a little bit of rolling, a bit of walking, and some overpower R2 attacks, the choir boy went down. I then come across Emerald, the best 3rd gen Pokemon game besides Pokemon Coliseum. That one will always be number 1 to me. After talking to her, I get the King's Ring, which means I can access a bunch of new areas like Aldea's Keep. As stated earlier, this isn't my first FromSoft game, so I wasn't going to fall for the enemy behind the wall trick. Well, fuck me then, I stand corrected. Let's just ignore that and move on to the boss fight. The Guardian Dragon. I don't have much to say about this fight, with just hanging out by its feet and rotating between its legs led to easy hits, and anytime it would fly up, I would just run away. I will say it looked cool when the dragon was up on the cage, but overall it was a very easy fight. With the Guardian Dragon defeated, that gave me access to the Dragon Area, and I have to say, this place is fucking gorgeous. I had to stop and just look around for a bit. After gawking for a while, I walked across the cinematic bridge and met with Aldea once again, who now has a small head. Remember, ladies and gents, we need to support our fellow micro-headed brothers. They have feelings too. Once done talking to micro-headed Aldea, I take on the Trial of the Dragons to be able to talk to the Ancient Dragon, who I then pick a fight with because he is a boss and he must die. Or I guess I die, that works too. For the second round, I ended up using the Toad Cheese. If you're wondering how I know this, it's because of a Geno clip from one of his DS2 runs. With that knowledge, I was able to take out the biggest HP sponge in the game. With the Ancient Dragon dealt with, I finally hit 50 in strength and started working on Faith. I then upgraded my fist to +4 to take on the Giant Lord, and like every giant boss so far, I just rotated between the legs, biting at the ankles until they finally fall down. I'm not joking, that's all I did to win this fight. After the fights, I obtained my second Giant Soul. With the Giant Lord giving me a giant sum of souls, I was able to get my faith to 27 to finally use Sunlight Blade. With base game pretty much completed, it was time to start working on the DLC. So I made my way over to the Gulch to fight 2 giants who put up a better fight than the Giant Lord, to then get the Forgotten Key and my 3rd Soul of a Giant. I then headed back to Majula to make friends with a ladder maker who seems weirdly familiar. Either way, I needed 12,000 souls, so I took out some unnecessary NPCs to be able to make the purchase, which allowed me to use the Forgotten Key to get the Dragon's Talon, which gives me access to the Sunken Kings DLC. Suck it, door, can't reject me now. The Shulva Sanctum City, a city full of high poised assholes surrounded by a pillar puzzle. Yeah, fuck this area. Oh look, Calamite 2.0. After saying hi to Calamite's cousin, Carl, with a K, I then die to this nightmare-inducing thing, place the Dragon Stone, and take on the first boss of the DLC, Alana, the Squalled Queen. Starting off, I really like Alana. She had some cool magic attacks with her effortlessly swinging around a giant axe, and she also gets bonus points for the grim aesthetic. But all that enjoyment faded away when I found out she summons ads. I was hoping for a more interesting second phase than trash mobs. Honestly, I felt like this was a missed opportunity to do something fun like having her do an area attack in different shapes or patterns, where it tests the player's reaction time to get out of the way but punishes players for panicking, leading them to get hit. Sadly, they went with the lazy option and just gave her summons. Maybe I wouldn't mind it so much if I didn't already fight multiple bosses with ads in them, but in general, I just find ads and boss fights to be the lazy boss design. This also goes for the other Souls games as well, not just the S2. Either way, I ended up dying 3 times until I was finally able to take out all her trash mobs and then killed her. Man, I really wanted to like this boss too, but right next door is the next boss, Sin, the Slumbering Dragon, who definitely wasn't slumbering earlier when burning the bridge. Sin was a super fun boss. He was the first boss that I actually had to learn his patterns to beat him. I will say most of the difficulty did come from what seemed like him having pretty wide hitboxes on his physical attacks. Besides that, I really enjoyed learning how to avoid his flying attacks, baiting him out to do fire breaths for easy hits, and just enjoying his cool design. I was a bit shocked though, hitting the chest didn't do more damage, especially with a giant arrow sticking out of it, but after 8 deaths, I was finally able to take down Carl with a K. After that lovely boss fight, I leveled my ADP a bit to help with iframes, to take on 3 NPC invaders masked as a boss fight. Y'all already know how I feel, I don't think I need to reiterate myself. I was actually so annoyed by this and the pain in the ass run back that I just summoned for the fight. I normally don't use summons, but for a fight like this that doesn't have an actual pattern to learn, I was okay with using them this time around. With the gank fight over with, I nabbed the heavy iron key to be able to access the second DLC, the Iron King. I have to say, I really like the design of this area. When walking across the giant chain, I couldn't help myself but stop and just look around for a bit and just take it all in. I 100% have to give this to DS2. It has the best area aesthetics in the trilogy. At least for me, anyways. Once done looking around, I came across a room full of enemies with barrels, and if you're a veteran of any RPG, you know enemies with barrels go boom, which I used to make my enemies go boom. Around this time, I finished upgrading one of my fists to +5 and decided to infuse it with lightning damage. Now, for those who haven't played much DS2, when you infuse a weapon, you can still apply spell buffs, which is fucking amazing and needs to come back. I did this because the bone fists get an S in lightning, but does drop me to a B in strength and a C in dex. But this will actually allow me to do more damage since I can now go hit the soft cap for faith, and with me having sunlight blade will just help with doing big damage. If the enemy isn't highly resistant to lightning, that is. With that done, I grabbed the scorching iron scepter, placed the scepter for me to take on the blue smelter demon. Funny enough, I really like this version of Smelter Demon, not just because of the cool blue fire, but actually find his fight to be way more enjoyable this time. I found he had fun combos to dodge and he didn't seem to randomly do AoE attacks, which could have been me just getting lucky. I almost had him on my first try, but he caught me off guard with his third swing. No worries though, because on my second round I had adapted and had no issues dodging it, leading me to a speedy victory. Thoroughly enjoying this fight, I wanted some more action, so I broke the 4 Ashen Idols to take on Fuck me. I have to give it to Fume Knight. He definitely lived up to the hype. The biggest thing I was happy about was in his second phase, his moveset changed instead of him summoning ads. Luckily, with all my experience with DS1 and 3, it didn't take me long to figure him out. Really, the easiest way to get hits on him is just by running around him and attacking his back. Now, he can attack you back here, but if you're just walking a bit to the right, it'll just miss. My only gripe with him is his lingering hitboxes on some of his attacks. This is something DS1 also has an issue with as well. DS3 is the only one I feel like that doesn't really have this issue. As you can see, I roll through Fume Knight's attack, but still get hit afterwards. Even though he does have a follow-up attack, you can tell the hitbox just persists the whole time instead of going away and then coming back at the start of the next attack. Besides that one nitpick, I really enjoyed this fight, and it only took me dying 5 times to beat Fuck me. Once done fucking myself, I dumped some points into Faith to pick a fight with a samurai, who killed me very quickly. Upon seeing how fast her alone was, I knew I needed to try the Lady Maria strat, where I lock on and just roll or walk to the right. And sure enough, that did the trick. I'm being serious, if you just lock on and keep rolling to the right or walking to the right, you can beat him pretty easily. It only took me 2 tries, at least he looks cool. After that quickie, I made my way to the 3rd DLC, the Ivory King. Hey, I know that Souls tuber. If you don't, you should check her out. She also makes really good Souls content, taking on the games in a really fun and interesting way. I will leave a link to her channel in the description of the video if you'd like to check her out. So, what do I think of this area? It's, a bit blurry, and for some reason it bothers my eyes a bit. No clue why. I think so far the old Iron King DLC is my favorite area. After straining my eyes for 30 minutes, I pick up the Eye of the Priestess, which will allow me to take on the first boss of the area, Ava, the King's Pet, which I had a first good round with until Ava decided I wasn't allowed to be happy. Then she, or he, decided to throw me around like their personal chew toy. Not going to lie, I laughed really hard at this.
But on my 4th try, I found I could just bait out their jump attack for easy hits. Take that, Ava. Once done backhanding a tiger, I leveled my faith to 42 and finally decided to finish upgrading my armor. I can use all the defense I can get at this point. I am then told I must go to war with the Ivory King, so I rounded me up some soldiers to go to battle, and battle we did. This I like. This is a much more fun way to go about having ads in a fight. Not only can you recruit soldiers to help you, they are also used to seal the portal so that you can take on the Ivory King 1v1. It just took me 3 times to finally be able to 1v1 him. By the time we could have an actual 1v1, the Ivory King was already at a quarter of health. But even with him being that low, he wasn't going to go out with a fight. But I know karate, so I win by default. After becoming the new Ice Queen of Narnia, it is time for everybody's least favorite area and my most hated area, Frigid Outskirts. To the dev or game designer who came up with this area, you can kindly go fuck yourself. Look, if there was a bonfire near the boss room or even just halfway, I wouldn't have that many issues with this area. But the fact that there's no bonfire and you have to do this heinous run back to the boss is a big no-no for me. So I did the logical thing and used the summons as fodder to make it to the boss room. Oh, looks like Ava has a sibling. Make that siblings. At this point, I wasn't in the mood to deal with the duo boss after that bullshit run back, so I just allowed myself to use the summons for help. Don't worry, even with the summons, I ended up dying 3 times. To add icing to the cake of this fight, the last surviving tiger buffs itself and heals itself. It's not like getting to the boss or having to fight 2 bosses was hard enough. But I am a smart cookie and use my summons as a distraction so I can smack the tiger to death. Did I mention I hate this area? After being physically and mentally tortured by FromSoft, I needed a pick-me-up. So I picked up the last 2 giant souls to fist Vendrick from behind. Yep, I just stood behind him, smacking his ass until he died. It's how he would have wanted to go. Fisting aside, I find Dark Side Gandalf, join his covenant, light the 3 bowls of fire to have the lovely surprise of being thrusted into a fight with Dark Lurker. If I would have known this, I would not have used the Lightning Fist to kill all those mobs prior. Either way, Dark Lurker is a cool fight. Except for when he splits into 2, he lost a few points from me there. But besides that one thing, I did really enjoy this fight, and I love how he looks. Tragically, I did struggle with him for a bit. Every time he would make his clones, I would end up getting smacked by one of them. So on my 7th attempt, I came up with a plan. I decided I will lower his health just a bit and then wait for him to do his beam attack. When he does this, I can just get under him to apply my lightning buff and use a bright bug to increase my damage. With that, I just DPS'd him down to make him split to attack at the exact moment to hit both lurkers to deal double the damage. After that, I just waited for good opportunities to punish them, and after 4 solid R2 hits, Dark Lurker goes down. With Dark Lurker no more, I do my final bit of leveling to take on the final 3 bosses. But first, I run into Emerald Herald Mummy, who apparently is a dragon. Well, you can call me Donkey then. Once done flirting, I take on the Throne Watcher and the Throne Defender. FromSoft, listen, just because there is a 2 in the title doesn't mean we need these many duo bosses. Luckily, they were squishy and went down in a couple of hits. Which then this grotesque thing pops out. Nito really needs to lay off fucking those skeletons.
It wasn't Nito.
After being disturbed by Nasandra and Scully, I get smacked to death. You know what? Fuck it, I'm just using the Bright Bug. Now that's what I'm talking about. Simple Unga Bunga victory. Ah shit, I forgot about Aldia. I probably should have saved the Bright Bug. I will say this fight seems to favor range since you take fire damage if you get too close to him. Which ended up taking me a hot minute to punch the micro-headed little shit, but I made sure to finish this run the right way using the Hadouken. And with that, I finally beat Dark Souls 2 for my first time. You know, you hear about how Dark Souls 2 is a bad game, but I do think it's blown a bit out of proportion. Now, it does have its downsides, but every game does. Even our favorite games have flaws in them, but that doesn't mean they aren't objectively bad. Personally, I don't think Dark Souls 2 is my favorite in the series. It's possible it'll grow on me more as I do future runs in it, but I did enjoy it, and that's all that matters. With that said, I would like to thank my channel supporters. If you too would like to support the channel or have your name in the video, you can click the Patreon link in the description or click the YouTube join button. I also from time to time stream my runs, so you can catch me streaming on YouTube or over on Twitch at Arcane Gaming. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.